The opinions and viewpoints expressed in .NET Rocks are not necessarily those of its sponsors, or of Microsoft Corporation, its partners, or employees. .NET Rocks is a production of Franklin's Net, which is solely responsible for its content. Franklin's Net, training developers to work smarter. Rockheads, pour a neat glass of 64-bit scotch and listen up. It's time for another stellar episode of .NET Rocks, the internet audio talk show for .NET developers with Carl Franklin and Rory Blight. This is Jeff Macilic, here to announce show number 92 with guests Neil Hudson, Steve DeMarco, Steven Salazar, Nigel Watling, Stephen R. Woodward, Volker Will, and Gianpaolo Carraro. Recorded live Friday, December 3rd, 2004. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net, training developers to work smarter, and now offering hands-on VBNet, ASP.NET, and C# classes. Online at www.franklins.net. Support is also provided by Code Magazine, Microsoft Technologies in-depth for IT managers and developers. Online at www.code-magazine.com. And now, the man who's cranky from staying up all night writing a web service client for his TRS-80, Carl Franklin!
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Jeff Macilic in the studio, the soundboard monkey.
Thank you.
Here in .NET Rocks. And yes, the disclaimer is alive and well. That was a joke last week when we said we didn't want a disclaimer. And Rory not here today. So, Jeff, maybe you could have a little banter with me instead of Rory.
Well, sure.
Okay.
I can be your pseudo-Rory.
You can be my bitch, baby.
Well, I didn't say I could be your bitch.
All right, well. Rory is out in Las Vegas. Wrong show. That was Mondays. Rory is out in Las Vegas having meetings with Microsoft people that he can't blow off, but he gives his warm regards and wishes he could be here with his fellow employees, many of which are probably way, way, way higher up the ladder of Microsoft than he is. He didn't say that. I'm just adding that. But before we get to, an interesting conversation with 7 Microsofties.
And thanks a lot, guys, for making my job so easy.
Yeah. We'll hear from them in a minute. I do want to read some mail. And, because, we didn't want people to think that we weren't doing any mail. It's just that we hadn't been really getting any. So this one came from Benjamin Wu, who is a longtime listener and does hang out in the chat room and has heaped praise upon us. And this was praise for Mondays. Hi, Carl. Angle bracket, Mondays praise. Mood equals slimy, angle bracket. Mondays great. Love the new format. Karen Greenwald has a hot voice. Jeff has great hair. / Mondays praise.
What is it with my hair, Carl?
I didn't say anything. They picked up on that you had nice hair. I don't know.
Bizarre.
I think it was Rory who started that thing.
Yeah, it's usually Rory's fault.
Yeah. Next, angle bracket, .NET Rocks praise. Mood equals wanting DNR to tour the UK. Angle bracket. There's a reason Don's called, in my head anyway, the Don. Fantastique to hear the show back in the old format, etc., 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 / .NET Rocks praise. So the real question is, which mode of creeping's more likely to get me swag? Shall I crawl to you in your DNR capacity, since although you don't read the mail anymore, it is back to your roots? Or in your Mondays capacity, since you read the mail? Well, guys, we don't get mail for 2 weeks, and people are like, .NET Rocks has changed forever, man. Anyway, back to the real point. I've put my main computer textbook online. This is what I've been learning all my computer stuff from. Do you think it's a good one? I'm not too sure myself. I haven't heard anyone talk about punch cards for a while. Is this one of those technologies that's now so passé that no one ever talks about it anymore, or what? And then he's got, angle bracket / irony, angle bracket. Anyway, here it is, and we've got a Shrinkster URL to his computer textbook, shrinkster.com/2L9. 2L9, and I'm going there now. And going there.
Wow.
I'm going there. I'm still going there. Hang on a second.
Yeah, I stole all the bandwidth from the site. I think it's running off of
How
one
it
of the
works.
computers it has on the cover.
The Computer, a Ladybird book. Oh boy, this is like 1971, and the revised edition, 1979. Wow, he's actually put parts of this book up here.
Hey, this is
wow, this is pretty cool.
Wow, he looks 24, 26. He's got different scans of the different editions. This is actually really...
Very nice.
Yeah, this
Thank
is
you,
cool.
Benjamin.
Wow.
And he says, let me know what you think. Benjamin, he says, P.S. I wasn't joking about the swag. Well, guess what, man? I feel so filled with Christmas cheer. I'm going to send you a .NET Rocks hoodie. Oh!
Yeah, this definitely deserves a DNR hoodie. It's got pictures of core memory and the theory of
Very
operation.
Cool. It's got tapes and stuff. This is the kind of stuff we used to see on ads for like Control Data Institute. Learn how to be a data processor, programmer, technician. Data input monkey. Okay. Well, anyway, I have another guest suggestion from Randy Given, who wants Francesco Balena to come on DNR. Francesco, this is a call to you, man. Come on the show. We do want to talk to you, and bring your sax. Let's see. Show comments and feedback. This is from Danny Figueres. Hey there, guys. First comment, downloads. Well, I have known the name of Carl Franklin for a long time, but only recently heard of .NET Rocks and how much info is on the shows. I suspect you guys are just hitting critical mass with MSDN linking to you and show getting better known. I hope server power and internet bandwidth do not become a problem. As a matter of fact, Jeff and I were just talking about that. Some of you have had problems with the downloads cutting off midstream, and we basically didn't have any kind of throttling connection-wise or bandwidth-wise, and we're not sure, but we're going to watch it this week and see if, we cut it down a little bit to see if we can't control that. And we'll figure it out one way or another. Just bear with us. Next comment. I have been a VB and C and SQL coder for some time and have a few comments on VB6 versus .NET and such. I agree with Billy Hollis. .NET needs to make some of the simple grunge work simpler. VSNet 05 looks like it's going to be real close. Here are a few examples of where the problems have come up for me in selling, in quotes, .NET. Large corporation has a very strict network policy. Users have Office 2000 and Windows 2000. I can use Access 2000 to build a database app for them without any install problems, etc. But installing .NET on even 10 PCs would need an act of Congress, so to speak. So while .NET would be better, SQL Server would be better, the only option I can do is the time and budget for the small apps is Access-based. The only option I can do in the time and budgeted for the small apps is Access-based packages. And to that I say, life sucks, man.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry. I work with a CPA who consults for another corporation. There we can probably load .NET on machines, but even there it has to be explained. So explain it. Listen to Tim Huckabee. Listen to Billy Hollis. You got to tell them to put their hands on the screen and drink that Kool-Aid. Drink that Kool-Aid. All right. And with VS.NET 2003 versus Access, the forms layout and reports engine in Access make the small apps so very easy to build. I would almost like to see an Access.NET in some ways, or at least the 05 forms builders to let me work like Access does. Have you seen what 05 lets you do with Windows Forms?
No.
It's unbelievable. Drag and drop data editor. Done. I mean, it's really, really simple.
That's kind of scary in a way. I actually remember you guys talking about debating whether or not that's a good thing on the show.
Oh, it's a good thing because it's not like the plumbing sucks, and it's not like you can't do really, really good things. It's just that if you want those extra high-level things, they're there too. Yeah. You don't have to use them. Nobody's holding a gun to your head.
Yeah. And it's not like they're hiding the code that it writes from you. You can always get to it by expanding it and editing the thing that says, do not edit this code, right?
Exactly. Anyway, love the shows. Now to get back to work, Danny Figueres, and he's in St. Petersburg, Florida. Danny, we're going to send you a .NET Rocks mug for being so kind. And one more letter from Mike D. Michael DeKonig, who says, hey, Carl and Rory, what about Jeff, man?
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to send us email, say, hey, Carl, Rory, and Jeff, or hey, Carl and guys, or just hey, guys.
Yeah. I mean, without me, there's no show, you jerks. Come on.
All right. I just wanted to tell you how much I enjoy the show, and especially the latest one with Billy Hollis. I'm from an area further south than Billy where we do say winders, and there were a few things mentioned on the show that I wanted to follow up on. I love the way Billy Hollis says that, Windows application. Now, you're going to write a Windows application over a web application. I love that. I could listen to him, like those ladies said. I could listen to him talk all day. I recently started listening to DNR every week after sampling a few of the shows on the most recent MSDN events DVD. Now I download the recorded shows on Monday and I listen to them on my commute on Tuesday morning. Maybe the MSDN events tour is one reason for your download spike in November. That could very well be. My experience with VB started with V5, but I've been working with .NET since 1.0. Although most of my work in VB5 was Windows applications, now most of my work is with ASP.NET. But I love the idea of smart clients, and I'm trying to find a way to get back into working in the Windows Forms arena. Billy mentioned a key concept of having a thin facade layer for data transport, or what he said Microsoft calls a channel adapter. I tried to search MSDN for that term, but didn't really get any meaningful links. Could you guys point me to some information on this? I did find a cool Adventures in VBNet article by Billy Hollis about extender providers. I really want to write one just so I can use the term. Anyway, keep on rocking. I'm looking forward to your upcoming shows, and especially show number 100. Mike D. Well, Mike, we'll thanks a lot. We'll send you a .NET Rocks mug, and but we're going to have to get your mailing address, so we'll do that.
So, Carl, I got to ask you a question.
Okay.
Do you actually ever get tired of all these people sucking up to you?
No, I never get tired. I love it, actually.
Awesome.
You know, it would be bad for me if I let it go to my head, but I know it doesn't. I mean, you know, it's not like I go to bed at night thinking, hey, man, I'm Carl Franklin.
Man, people are writing emails to me.
Yeah. And then I have this show and like thousands of people listen. You know what I'm thinking when I go to bed at night? Ah, shit, I got to take the garbage out and get up, put on my damn pants and get up, take the garbage out. It's just life, folks. No big deal.
Yeah. I noticed, though, people have been blogging about my hair and apparently now emailing you about my hair. So my hair is getting to my head, so to speak.
Did you ever think people would be writing to a show that thousands of people listen to every week about your hair?
No. Well, I don't know. My hair is pretty impressive.
All right.
I mean...
Well, that's enough stupidity, don't you think?
So who've we got, Carl?
Well, my guests tonight are 7 folks from Microsoft, and the overall topic is Windows Server 2003, although we're going to be talking a lot about Windows, about security, 64-bit computing, and J2EE migration. And the guests are as follows. Neil Hudson coordinates the developer evangelism for Windows in Microsoft and is responsible for a multinational team including French, German, English, American, Venezuelan, Italian, and Swiss that focuses on technology from security, collaboration, management, 64-bit computing, and migration. How does he cope? One wonders. Steve DeMarco, PM, project manager for Windows evangelism, is responsible for stitching together all the external demands from the Microsoft field, customers, and partners to the technical resources and programs driven by Microsoft. Technical evangelist Stephen Salazar, Nigel Watling, and Stephen R. Woodward have been specializing in the area of security within Microsoft, all the way from writing secure apps, patch management and identity, access management, to looking at the future of technologies which will be part of Windows R2 and Longhorn server. We'll find out what that means in a minute. Technical evangelist Volker Will is responsible for developer evangelism of 64-bit computing, both with partners and customers, but also through large events such as WinHEC, TechEd, and something they call Route 64. Find out why 64-bit is the new 32. And finally, architect and evangelist Gianpaolo Carraro is still recovering from just completing a J2EE migration workshop for partners in the Microsoft BLD 20, that would be Building 20, lab. And we're going to get his thoughts and feedback from the event that finished just recently, just today, I think, maybe yesterday. So let's see if 7 Microsoft people can all say .NET Rocks at the same time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Well,
this is going to be more fun than a mouse at a burlesque show.
Yeah.
Trying to coordinate everybody. So why don't I have you go through through the list here and just say hi and speak a little bit so that we can identify your voices, because I'm probably going to, I can't see you guys, obviously, and it's going to be tough to tell who's who. So starting with Neil. How are you?
Hey, I'm fine.
Neil Hudson. So you guys are all in Redmond right now, right?
We are. So we're all based in Building 18. We
Okay.
sort of move around a bit, but Building 18 is our current base.
Good. Okay, Steve DeMarco, say hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I am well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
Good.
Neil made sure that he wanted to have somebody on the phone who was actually American by origin, but I hail from Montana, so I don't know if that actually counts. One of the things I got to do is work as a program manager across this fun team, and just working to try to make sure that the challenging messages and things that these guys know inherently in their head are able to scale, pretty broadly and very deeply across our channel partners and our customers worldwide, and
Cool.
work very closely with them in executing some of their events.
All right. Steven Salazar, how are you, sir?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing fine. What's going on in your neck of the woods this evening?
Well, right now I'm currently working in the team, focusing mostly in the area of identity and access management.
Okay. And Nigel, you are also working on that same team?
I'm in a related team.
Okay.
My role is to evangelize security, talk about security to ISVs, and persuade them of the importance of using secure coding techniques in their applications, and also how to use the security features in the platform.
Okay. Is that a dog I hear in the background there?
Not my dog.
No? Oh,
Not
somebody's
me
dog.
barking either.
That's my dog. I guess he wants to be on the show as well.
Oh, okay. And Stephen Woodward.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, so I'm another technical evangelist in Neil's team, specializing in collaboration and now moving on to work with Steven Salazar on the identity management side. So I was a technical evangelist for Live Communication Server for about, 2.5, almost 3 years. Now moving on to, as I said, to look more at the identity management and what we're doing there in the future for R2 and Longhorn Server.
Okay. And so you three, what is Windows R2?
So R2 will be the release of Windows Server that will come after SP1. So build on SP1, but we have a kind of a written rule, I guess, is that we don't put new features into service packs. So R2 will actually be built on top of SP1 of Windows Server 2003, but will actually include some new features. For example,
I see.
Active Directory Federated Services will be in there. Someone help me out with some other ones. But I guess the other one that's in there is quarantine for VPN. There's probably a couple of other features that we've probably announced publicly.
There will be a new feature of SharePoint in there.
Okay, I get the idea.
Yeah, new features in Atom as well.
Okay. And Volker Will.
Yeah, I'm focusing on the most exciting part of the platform, which is 64-bit. And as you mentioned earlier, 64-bit is the new 32.
And and that means what?
That means what? That means that by the end of next year, every system, every box you buy at a computer store or Best Buys or whatever, will be equipped with a processor that will be capable of executing 64-bit code.
I see. So the new 32-bit, you wouldn't say 32-bit, but the new 32.
It's the new 32, yeah. Exactly.
I get it. Okay, and finally, Gianpaolo.
Yes, hi. You forgot to mention my highly popular blog.
It's not on my sheet, that's why. What is your popular blog? 2
posts and about 1 comment.
Oh, cool.
So, no, more seriously, one of the area I'm covering as part of the Windows Evangelism Initiative is the Java J2E migration.
Right.
So I actually joined Microsoft three years ago from a Linux J2 background. So I really want to help my old friends in the Java world to see the light, the same light that I saw, and join this better place that .NET is.
Okay.
And as you said before, I just finished running a workshop literally 2 hours ago in our lab here in Building 20 with 20 partners from around the world, from Dominican Republic, Canada, South Africa, Canada, and all the places came over and learned all the tools and techniques and best practices to successfully migrate application from Java to .NET.
Would you say there were representatives of both blue and red states there?
I think they were mainly blue states.
Oh boy, is that going to generate some email.
Okay.
Well, very good. Well, I'm really glad to have all you guys on the show. And I just got to say, before you guys start going on about what you're talking about, that I love Windows Server 2003. Thank you very much. I love it. I love it. I love it. Not only is it wicked fast, but I like the fact that it's locked down. And I like the fact that the Internet Information Server is at the kernel level. Thank you very much. I love the fact that images get cached at the kernel level. I love the interaction with ASP.NET. I think it's great. And thank you for making such a great product, Microsoft. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Hey, Neil, do you want to hire this guy? He seems to be pretty hot.
I think
so.
You're hired, man. Well, Neil, would you call yourself the ringleader in this conversation?
I am. So I've been looking after evangelism for quite a number of years. I joined Microsoft a long time ago. And in those days, I thought I would be here for a couple of years and then move somewhere else. And the companies kept me hooked all that time. And it's been quite a roller coaster ride all the way through from NT 3.1, 3.5.1, 4, and to where we are today with 2003 and Service Pack 1. But no, it's very interesting. I mean, as Volker probably said, one of the things that we're finding that's really getting a lot of interest in the market at the moment is 64-bit computing.
Right.
It's been very much a niche market for quite some time.
Yeah, it certainly has. Yeah. And
we moved about 4 years ago from 16 to 32. There were lots of demands for more memory. There were obviously issues about pointers and making applications which would virtualize correctly. And we never thought that the world would ever hit the 4 gigabytes virtual address space of Windows. But it's surprising. We have a large number of ISVs now and quite a few customers who just need more memory and need a faster processor architecture. And so that's what's one of the things that's really driving us. And I guess the second one is security. And we had a big effort last year within Microsoft to make sure that everybody who built software on the platform really knew how to build secure code.
Right.
And now we're continuing that on, and also looking at what new features we can put in the platform to make sure that also for those home users out there, as well as the corporate developers, they're far more secure on our platform.
Let me ask you this about 64-bit computing, because it seems to me that, it's not only the servers, but the client, the desktop PCs that sort of drive the prices down, because that's really the mass market for PCs. is there any real application? I mean, obviously on a server, more memory is good, more, disk addressable, better SQL servers, awesome. On the client, what kinds of advantages does a client computer get with 64-bit computing?
Well, today, for example, we had a meeting with an ISV who is big in digital content creation.
Okay.
And what these guys really see is not only their applications benefit from the more memory that is available on the client side as well as on the server, of course, but what they also see is that the new system architecture introduced by Intel and by AMD gives them more compute power for their applications that typically would, in a 32-bit world, run in a multi-system environment, perhaps. So they now can do stuff like a whole TV studio in a backpack. This is what they showed us. And they work on a project where they have the whole software running on one high-end system you can stuff into a backpack and do a TV studio on the road, for example.
So for software that's written for 64-bit, it means better performance is what you're saying?
Yeah, what these guys are looking for is they do video rendering, etc. So what they are looking for is better performance. So better performance for the same price if possible, because they can't charge more because their customers already demand more performance for less price. So 64-bit enables them to deliver.
What about laptops? Any CPUs that are suited for laptops?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we don't have a camera here, so this is only radio, which is already great. But right in front of me is one of the new 64-bit laptops from Acer, these shiny red Acer Ferrari laptops. They are equipped with a 64-bit processor already. But this is only one of a broad variety of hardware vendors that deliver 64-bit laptops today already.
So you mentioned graphics. What about, I would imagine that video and audio processing, not video graphics, like game video, but actual video signal and audio processing is probably going to be much better on a 64-bit system, don't you think?
Well, it's better in a way that for an average home user creating your vacation video or taping your children and later transfer the recordings to the PC, to a 64-bit PC, will give you way more performance when you convert this and burn this onto a DVD, etc., etc.
Yeah, because obviously you're dealing with lots of gigs of data there.
This is exactly it. Yeah.
And just one thing to add also is that what we've done a great job with is making sure that even 32-bit applications can actually see some advantages from actually running on the new 64-bit OS. So we've had some ISVs again in that digital content space that are even just taking their existing 32-bit applications, putting them on the 64-bit OS, actually see some pretty dramatic improvements in performance. And the areas that they're seeing this is in the disk I/O. So because the kernel now has more virtual memory, and the way that we actually deal with disk with the new architecture means that the performance of just accessing very large files from disk is really has improved dramatically.
Yeah, I imagine. And correct me if I'm wrong, but .NET 2.0 has support for 64-bit through and through, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Not only the framework 2.0, but also the framework 1.1 is supported on 64-bit and enables applications to be either executed on a 64-bit version of the framework or in compatibility mode, if you want, on the 32-bit version of the framework on 64-bit.
Okay, so framework 1.1 there's a 64-bit version of it? Is that what you're saying, or
no? There's a 32-bit version of it only, but this is supported like any other application in quotes
Sure.
on 64-bit.
And is this just with the AMD chips that have this 32-bit processor sort of embedded in it? Tell me about that. What's the deal with the Intel and AMD chips? And I know that AMD had the upper hand at one time. They had a chip that did both really, really well. What's the latest on that?
Well, Intel as well as AMD have 64-bit processors that are capable of executing 32-bit code, and the Windows operating system supports the execution of 32-bit code on the 64-bit OS.
Okay.
And we started off our 64-bit story with the Itanium processor 4 years ago about. And the Itanium processor is a complete new design, a complete new development made by Intel and Hewlett-Packard.
Mm-hmm.
And AMD has took a different approach. They developed a processor that is natively capable executing 32-bit applications. And since a couple of months, Intel has the same kind of architecture, also the same processor.
Mm-hmm.
It's called EM64T. And these two, so the AMD processors, 64-bit processors, and the processor from Intel, the EM64T, the Xeon EM64T,
Mm-hmm.
are capable of executing 32-bit code natively on the processor itself. So there's no emulation layer whatsoever. So there's a better 32-bit compatibility story for these.
And AMD, I think, was the first one to have that sort of level of sophistication, right?
Yes, this is
yeah.
it.
What do you think in terms of comparing? I know they're partners and stuff, and you don't want to make anybody mad, but in terms of comparing the two, are there any similarities or differences, or anything that makes, features that make one more suited for servers, let's say, and one more suited for clients? Or
I see. Yeah, both are built with compatibility in mind, so maintaining compatibility with existing 32-bit applications. And the Windows operating system running on top of these architectures, so the AMD64 and the EM64T architecture, is built to support the execution of 32-bit apps. And from an operating system perspective, both architectures look the same.
all right.
So there's no different binary we ship for.
But there isn't any difference in the caching or any other internal features that are more suited to servers or clients or whatever?
Well, AMD has, when it comes to addressing addressing the memory, has a different approach in how they handle on the processor the memory access, while the Intel EM64T still has its front-side bus architecture with a memory chip architecture in place. AMD has all this on the die. So if you want, there may be some sort of a benefit, yes.
Okay. Interesting.
I think time will tell.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we'll find out.
And it's interesting. I mean, both chip makers are out there in the marketplace now. Obviously, when we ship SP1, we'll have both the server version and also an XP version of 64-bit. And consumers will soon, if there are, from our point of view, the code for Windows is exactly the same. Anybody writing apps, the code is exactly the same. But obviously, consumers will always choose the best option.
What applications out there that we might know are being written or targeted for 64-bit? That the out of the box kind of applications, like who's stepping up to the plate here? Besides Microsoft, we know you guys will ship 64-bit apps.
Notepad.
64-bit Notepad, yeah. One of our efforts in helping ISVs to migrate their applications to 64-bit, let me start with that, is that we have a lab here, the one Gianpaolo was using this week, the Building 20 lab. And on a regular basis, we also host 64-bit developer labs. And while our initial goal was it to have the, top 10, top 15, 20 ISVs from our perspective to help them migrate on 64-bit a year ago or so, even before that, when we only had the Itanium world, this lab today is very, very frequent, visited by all sorts of ISVs across the board, big names, infrastructure ISVs, but also ISVs that have 32-bit applications and that see that 64-bit offers them new market opportunities.
Yeah, but are you seeing a trend like in data-intensive applications mostly?
To some extent, we have seen in the beginning, especially when we started with 64-bit, we've seen a lot of database related or related vendors or database vendors that came to the lab and started migrating to 64-bit or wanted to tweak and tune their applications, while today it is like more and more the typical workstation type of application, like I mentioned earlier, digital content creation, etc.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And so when can we expect some bits?
Well, next year we'll ship Service Pack 1. As you may know, 64-bit from a Microsoft perspective is already around for quite some time, but only on Itanium. But with Service Pack 1 at the same time or around the same time with Service Pack 1, beginning next year, we will ship the support, the operating system support for what we call the x64 architecture, so the AMD 64 and the Xeon EM64T stuff.
And are you guys trying to coordinate that as best you can with the release of .NET 2.0, or do you have your own internal schedule?
Well, as for all applications and framework for now, let's take the framework as an application. As for all applications, we can't release the applications or most of the applications can't be released at the same time as the OS because testing has to be done on the final bits of the OS before we can ship that. So we expect that shortly after the availability of SP1, we'll ship the framework.
Okay, so SP1's going to come after the framework, or come before first. That makes a lot of sense. Well, that's awesome. I can't wait. I can't wait to check it out. Any of you other guys have anything to add about 64-bit?
I think 64-bits are absolutely inevitable. It's just a matter of timing. A lot of my discussions I've had with ISVs is just about when they should bring their product to market to support 64-bit. And if you look at the analysts, then it seems to be pretty clear that it's sooner rather than later. And it's always good to catch the waves of Microsoft technology if you're an ISV and to try and synchronize your product to ship when our bits go.
A question from the chat room. Which applications we know today won't work on 64-bit CPUs and 64-bit Windows?
As for any cross-platform support, some of the applications may not work out of the box. 32-bit applications on the 64-bit OS. A typical example, for example, and we had one of our applications, one of our poster child, SQL Server, did not run on 64-bit in the beginning because you could not install it.
Oh.
The way how installation on a 64-bit OS works is for a 64-bit application, you need a 64-bit installer.
Right.
32-bit application, you need a 32-bit installer.
Sure.
This is to maintain compatibility with the file system and with the registry. So this is one of the typical examples. Other examples where applications did not run in the first place is version checking. If you do version checking and don't expect a version number of a 64-bit operating system, you may refuse to run, even though you can be installed.
Sure.
The vast majority of 32-bit applications, and I'm not talking only about Microsoft applications here, they simply install and run on a 64-bit OS. One of our goals for the 64-bit OS is to maintain compatibility with 32-bit applications.
Good. So most of if it's not a matter of the binaries actually not running, but it's usually some gotcha like an installer or some explicit check.
Yeah, it is not about that the binary code doesn't execute on the processor. It usually has something to do with the infrastructure, like install, for example, version checking and this.
And what do you guys know about about .NET programming against the 64-bit platform? Can we talk about that? How's that going to change? Like, what difference is it going to make to me? Do I have to worry about anything as a programmer?
The cool stuff when it comes to the framework is you develop once and execute on all platforms where the framework is supported and where you're talking about the compact framework, where your features are supported.
Right.
So 32-bit framework, 64-bit framework, feature parity, building an application for the framework without doing any COM interop or API calls to the operating system. These applications will run just out of the box.
Okay.
Applications that do COM interop or call API calls of the operating system have to be tested, but they should run if the components are available on all the operating systems.
Okay, good. Good. And what about the price of memory? Do you think that that the release of 64-bit servers and operating systems is going to drive down the price of RAM again? I know it's pretty amazing. I haven't checked in a while, but what does a gig of RAM go for these days?
Well, I don't know.
Like $100?
I don't know.
But do you think that we're going to find Mondo Jagundo RAM chips out there?
Well, these guys are working on 2 gigabyte socket, what's it called, sticks or 4 gigabyte sticks. So we'll definitely see these enormous memory sticks coming up very soon. And the more the 64-bit hardware platforms penetrate the market, and the more Windows systems we have around with all these demanding, memory demanding and performance demanding applications like digital content creation, for example, we'll see that memory will go down because the demand will go up. The prices will go down.
Right. And so what do you think, so how much memory space can, RAM space can a 64-bit processor address?
From a 64-bit processor, or let's talk about the operating system. A total of virtual address space, like what we mentioned before, what Neil mentioned before, on a 32-bit system is 4 gigabyte. On a 64-bit system, this is 16 terabytes of memory.
Okay. So do you think we're going to find, how long is it going to be before we have, 120 gig memory sticks? Things like that.
Wow, 120 gig memory sticks.
I mean, we're going to look back on this in 10 years and go, those guys are so...
It was just the old 64-bit days, man.
Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous. But, what do you think that the next jump in memory stick is going to be for a 64-bit operating, processor?
I guess the next big jump in memory will be something like 8 or 16.
8 or 16 gigs, yeah.
But well, it's just a guess.
So how are the motherboards going to handle? I mean, are you going to have to have an extra box just for your RAM chips?
Yeah, maybe you need an extra box. It may also be that they just fit into that they will come up with a nice design where they can. Driving down or improving the technology, driving down the size of the chips themselves, and so we may end up having a laptop with, let's say, a terabyte or so.
The next question,
the disk space is also going up. Imagine when you need to hibernate. You have to hibernate like 128 gig.
That's why I'm thinking that was my next question. I mean, why not just have non-volatile RAM? That why do we? Are we going to come to a point where we don't need the disk at all?
Yeah, for example, this is one of the cool stories when it comes to database applications like SQL Server, for example.
Yeah.
One of the major benefits for these apps is they just run in memory. They keep all the data in memory. Once it's loaded, it's lightning fast.
Yeah.
Just don't pull the plug, yeah?
Yeah, until you pull the plug, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Sure. All right, good enough. So let's move on to security. So who wants to tackle that topic?
Are you sure you finished with 64-bit?
I think we're I think we're done, man.
Sorry, Nigel.
That's all right. Cut me off in my prime. That's fine.
You had one?
No, not yet.
Still
I'm
hoping.
not that old. Others might beg to differ. So I'm the security evangelist, and my job's to try and talk to ISVs about security and try and take Microsoft seriously when we talk about security, and that it's an issue for the industry, I guess. The whole industry is a threat from attackers, from hackers, whatever you want to call them.
So I have one word for you, and I want your reaction. Firefox.
Firefox. What sort of reaction are you looking for? It's a good browser, which is also I think had security vulnerabilities already. But there's no. You guys, anybody that develops software knows that it's impossible to write perfect software. All software has bugs. Those bugs may or may not be security bugs. But if it is a security bug, you can just look at the perceptions of Microsoft as a company overall through the eyes of somebody who's looking at our security vulnerabilities in the past.
Right. I totally understand that. Mike. I mean, we used to do a segment on the show called the Linux Vulnerability of the Week.
Mm-hmm.
And we would go out to, the Linux vulnerabilities posting site, and, as recently as that day, there would be some major heinous bug in the kernel that would be like some sort of memory overflow, elevated permission possibility, this kind of thing. And we did it to prove the point that, Microsoft software isn't the only software that has bugs. Other operating systems have bugs, but people target Microsoft because they're the big dog. But to the guy who needs to secure his computer when the whole world is, doing drive-by shootings on your desktop via your browser, what do? You use another browser. And so I myself have even resorted to using Firefox on certain machines just because I didn't have the energy to battle the constant barrage of worms and other crap that kept slipping in there.
Well, there's two things to this. One is that you choose a different product because the one that you traditionally use is being attacked because it has such a large market share.
Right.
And simply by using it, you increase the market share of that product, and therefore you can make it a more attractive target for attackers. So you can't really win by that.
No, but you can win some time.
The thing that we need to do, that Microsoft needs to do, is to make our products more secure out of the box. We made a lot of progress about bolting down our products and being secure by default. And I really appreciate the comments you said about Windows Server 2003.
Oh, it's awesome.
And initially when people install that, especially, it's my reaction as well when I install it, is, my God, nothing works anymore, because out of the box it was secure. You don't need, why would a consumer want IIS enabled by default on their client box? There's no reason for that. Right. And we've taken that lesson on board, and all of the software that we're shipping is designed to be secure out of the box. And if you need a feature, then you go ahead and turn it on. And this is a cultural shift for Microsoft, because in the past, the history of the desktop computer, it's all about getting as many features out as possible, and it's features that sold your product. But that doesn't really apply anymore. I mean, it doesn't matter how good your product is. If you have a number of very public, compromising vulnerabilities in your application, then people will stop using you. And you've just illustrated that by saying, well, I'm using, you're using Firefox because of the vulnerabilities that have been found in IE. It's demonstrable that people will do that. But the challenge I find is that ISVs oftentimes have their head in the sand, and they think, well, obviously attackers are going after Microsoft because they're going after the operating system, and Microsoft has a lot of share of the market, so it's a good target. But attackers aren't out there just for attacking the good name of Microsoft. They're out there to make money. They're out there to find confidential information. They're out there to do evil.
Right.
They're not really discriminating about who they, which the vectors are that they use to attack people. That they'll use whatever operating system's out there, and there are vulnerabilities, as you say, in every single operating system, every single product.
Do you
and
think
if you're an ISV, just imagine if you have your application and it's out there in the market, and somebody makes an example of your application, and you don't have a response to that, you don't have a patching process in place.
Yeah.
Your entire business can be undermined. Just imagine you as an ISV, if somebody attacks your software and your software is shown to be vulnerable, people will switch. They will switch to a competing product, and that's your whole business at stake. You've got to do the work, and that's something that became very clear at Microsoft. Why we put such a lot of effort into security. It wasn't just philanthropy. It's because it was having a huge impact on our business, and we have to do the right thing. And the right thing is security first, features afterwards. And it's been a complete culture and mindset change here.
Now, do you think that the problems that people have had in the past with IE are more operating system issues, or are they IE issues? Like, I find a lot of them have to do with people running as an admin, and then some script gets installed and downloaded somehow. These people figure out how to fool it into downloading and executing something that is running with your full admin privileges. And, that in and of itself, I think, is a flaw in the operating system, where it can't tell the difference between code that was run by a user's input, a user executing something, and code that was run by other code. And so what are you guys doing in the next generation of operating systems to sort of help with that?
Well, before we get on to the next generation of operating systems, I think that the critical message that I communicate to anybody using Windows is to make sure that they're using Service Pack 2, Windows XP Service Pack 2.
Yes.
That is much, much more secure than any other consumer operating system we've had before.
Right.
And I take your point about running as admin. There's two things, right? One is having some bug in the code, whether it's the operating system or a particular application. And perhaps I shouldn't go down that line, because the EU might take objection as to whether a particular application is part of the OS or whether it should be a separate application.
True.
But once an application or a piece of code is compromised by an attacker, what the attacker can do is entirely down to the rights that the code that they've compromised is running under.
Yes.
If it's just running as a local user or as your user credentials, that hacker can do only, unless it's compromised the system further, it can only do what you can do or that particular account can do. If you're running as admin, that the hacker can do whatever an admin can do on that box, which is pretty much anything they damn well please.
Right.
And one of the most entertaining demos you can see about security is to see a SQL Server attack going through SQL injection, where it's very common that you'll have a live website and underneath it there's SQL Server, and it's just running as SA. It's very common. It's less common these days, but it's still common, I'm sad to say.
Yeah.
And a hacker can just go through a bit of SQL injection, where they inject a bit of SQL to gain access to the SQL Server.
Sure.
And then once they get in through that, because the SQL Server is running as admin, they can hack into your network and download, using trivial FTP, some tools, and they're on their way.
They can do whatever
and it's really frightening how quickly a hacker can get into your corporate network and do some real...
Or even just dropping tables and
destroying
your database.
You can pretty much do what you want. If there are people listening to this who say SQL injection, I don't know what that is.
No, we've talked about it a couple of times.
And indeed, given presentations where you sort of see people going pale in the room, dashing out on their mobiles.
I did that this week. I was talking to a group of people, and there was a couple in the crowd that didn't know about SQL injection attacks, and I saw their faces turn red. One of them left the room. Yeah, they were like, I got to check.
There was one person I met who shall remain nameless. Of course, this isn't somebody in Microsoft, but when they were doing their SQL injection demonstrations, they would actually surf around the internet looking for a vulnerable site, and they'd actually do their SQL injection demonstration on a live site to really drive home that this thing was a real problem, and how you could. And he was like listing their tables. I don't know that he did any real damage to the site. He might have been, especially if it was America, he might have gotten into trouble. But it's really chilling what you can do through that. But to get back to my original thing about XP2, it really should be on everybody's machine, because you have vulnerabilities in all code. We've already said that, but especially around IE and around SP2 generally, it's a lot more locked down. So even if there continue to be vulnerabilities, there will continue to be found, but because the default security of XP is much higher now, even if there is a vulnerability, then you'll find that you're protected. And we've seen this even with recent vulnerabilities. You'll see that maybe IE6 SP1 is vulnerable to a particular attack. But in the XP SP2 code base, although IE has the same bug there, because Windows XP SP2 is much more shut down, although the vulnerable code is there, the machine isn't infected because the hacker isn't able to get through that initial layer of defenses and exploit the vulnerable code underneath. So it's a consumer message rather than as well as a developer message. For developers, they should actually make sure that their applications run correctly on XP/SP2, because security is the enemy of usability, right? The more secure you make something, the less usable it is. If I make my car more secure by giving it an immobilizer and having thumbprint or whatever, then I have to have extra steps to get into my car. It's less immediately usable. Whereas if I just have it unlocked and I can hotwire it, it's a lot quicker to get into.
I heard a rumor that there was going to be another version of IE. Is there?
I don't know if I'm allowed to confirm that or not, but Microsoft is extremely paranoid about being challenged by other companies and always trying to be the best. And and Firefox is having some degree of success, so I really hope that has some stimulus within Microsoft, and that
I'd like to see a managed code browser, because there you have much more control over security. It's odd that not so much now, but I remember talking to companies who said they didn't want to install the .NET framework on a client computer because they thought it was a security risk. And I was like, what are you, nuts? It's probably the best thing you can do for your computer, But
all I would say on the futures of the browser, I'd highly recommend trying to get Dave Massey, a good friend of ours, in a conversation on what's happening with the browser. Former DHTML dude. He now blogs on IE. He's back being a senior program manager within the IE team, and he could really give you the lowdown on what's going on there, rather than us trying to.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you guys on the hot seat for IE, but because that's not your area, but it does seem to be on everybody's mind these days.
Yeah, it's fair. As regards futures and run it, you made a fair criticism about the operating system knowing the user context that an application is running in, and sandboxing that a lot more effectively. And that's certainly in the plans for Longhorn.
Sure, because the .NET framework now can walk up the stack and find out who called it. And, that's all part of code access security, and it's a wonderful thing. Yeah.
Well, there's two things. Code access security and standard user security are complementary. They both have an effect. So code access security is about what code is able to do. So the whole problem behind, the I Love You virus, the code came from untrusted source through an email, and same as if you run code from the internet.
Right.
But when you run that code, it runs as your identity, so it can do anything that you can do.
Right.
The idea with code access security is that code will have varying levels of trust depending on where it comes from. If it's on your hard disk, there's a high probability that it was installed by the administrator, because typically you install programs as administrator. and therefore it's by default it's trusted code. From the internet or via an email, it's less trusted. So it shouldn't be able to format your hard disk, right? That's not a thing that code coming down from the internet should do.
But
so that's the idea between code access security. User security is different. That's the me as a user. I'm doing things day to day. Do I have the ability myself, running as a normal user account, to delete a file in my Windows directory or whatever?
Right. But it seems like a natural extension of that. Make the operating system smart enough to know whether software was run from a stack that started with a user's UI or by some other code. It seems like, well, to make something foolproof would be challenging, but it seems like a natural extension of that, being able to walk the stack and looking at stuff.
Yeah, you'll certainly see a lot of enhancements in this area.
Right.
Also, the whole idea around having to be an administrator to install applications, and there's a lot of work we're doing to make that whole experience a lot more seamless, and to also be a lot more sensible about the environment that a user is operating in, and what they should be able to do and what they shouldn't be able to do, and how to manage a box much more effectively. And we're dealing with the legacy of where we've come from.
Right.
Before the internet, people didn't really worry about security issues, because if you've just got a standalone machine, you need somebody to come up and knock you over the head before they have access to the machine. But when everything's plugged into the internet, things change, and the internet is like the seediest environment you're ever going to be in, right?
Right. No, it's true.
And you have to take steps to protect yourself against that. And it's
a
not
tough challenge.
One of the criticisms again that we have with Microsoft software nowadays is that giving users choices and giving them dialog boxes. Do you trust this certificate? You shouldn't really present the user with a choice if you can help it. You should be making intelligent decisions for the user where it makes sense.
And I suppose Click Once does that nicely by just allowing the user to authorize themselves once and then using that authorization to authorize other things. I agree. The last thing that your mother knows is whether or not to execute, fireworks.exe that she got from her aunt, and, it's okay because it came from my aunt. Well, she doesn't know, where aunt got it from or whatever. So, yeah, I agree. Presenting users with, do you want to play Russian roulette? Do you want to screw your system? Take a chance.
Sure.
I
So,
think that's
are
very
there
smart.
other things you want to cover in the call, like some of what the other guys are doing? Any future stuff around? Did we talk about R2 yet, or?
A little bit. Let's. We just introduced it, so why don't we talk about R2? It was the first I've heard of it tonight, actually. So let's talk about R2. What is that exactly?
Well, R2 is the second release of Windows Server 2003. It is based on Service Pack 1 of Windows Server, as Stephen Woodward talked about. I work mostly with a few of the features that are going to be available on R2, one of them being ADFS, or Active Directory Federation Services.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what that will provide is for corporations to create business-to-business partnerships where an employee of one enterprise can basically access resources, software resources from another corporation across the internet using single sign-on, basically using the same digital identity that describes that user within his own company. He can access those resources provided by another partner across the internet.
Nice. Is this kind of like an evolution of what you guys are trying to do with .NET My Services, maybe? Or a scaling down of it?
I would say it's part of it. This is mostly geared towards business-to-business type of partnership or relationships more than a consumer, business-to-consumer type of environment, if you will. So I would say it's part of it.
Okay.
that's one of the differences between that and Passport, for instance.
Right. Neat. And again, SP1 coming out next year, R2 coming out sometime after that.
That
right?
is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so just on times, the idea is that R2 of Windows will ship sometime towards the end of next year.
Okay.
So and clearly SP1 will ship closer to the beginning of next year. But obviously we're not to a point yet where we can give a formal release date.
Okay. Are there any other Windows server-based or server-like operating systems coming out that we can talk about? Or is this just the single line of servers?
One interesting sort of change that we're looking at is the area around what we call HPC or high performance computing.
Mm-hmm.
Where people build a very large cluster based on low price commodity machines. There's a lot of that going on, particularly in the scientific areas.
Yeah.
And so we will actually ship a release of Windows towards the end of next year, which will be focused on those small style, thousands of machines in a single cluster.
Now, I got a question about this because this is fascinating to me. Do I have to have software that takes advantage of that particular cluster, or can I just simply make a multi-threaded application and will the OS delegate those threads to those different machines automatically?
Okay. So, I mean, the main way this works is that there is a high performance transport that is used, and one of the features that's one of the key parts of this version of the operating system is MPI. And MPI is as I said, a very lightweight API that provides that quick interchange between applications, and that call could be potentially between a different process, but also it could be between a different machine within the same cluster.
Okay, but you specifically have to code for it? It's not like I could take Adobe Premiere, which is taking forever to render some special effect on a movie, which is going to take days, and just run it on a cluster, and it's magically going to go faster. Right?
There will be some work to obviously use, for example, the MPI stack, and make sure you start to re-architect that application to be cluster aware.
Got it.
So there is some work, but also there are, you talk about one area like Adobe, but you can also imagine the concepts of being able to, take or build a query that needs to query, an absolutely enormous database and bring back a very small result set. And clearly we think, in the commodity market, this is an area where we think HPC computing could really set off.
You said in the ecology market?
No, it's in the commodity market.
Commodity market, okay.
And to add to the HPC story, the next generation of Visual Studio 2005, will have support for this HPC environment by supporting technologies like OpenMP. And you were talking earlier about this multi-threaded application that may take forever to do something, even though it's multi-threaded.
Right.
You will have to do something in your code, but what we've seen here in demonstrations is all you have to do is let the operating system know, let the infrastructure know that you are multi-threaded and that you can work on shared resources by adding one statement to your code section. That is multi-threaded, and recompile the application.
That's it?
That's in some cases, that's just it. Yes.
Wow, that's sweet. I'm seriously that's exciting. I'm sorry, I'm geeking out here, man. That's really amazing. Because I've looked at some of the third-party APIs for accessing clusters and all this kind of stuff, and it just seems like ridiculously complex. And leave it to Microsoft to simplify it for the developer. That's awesome.
And for HPC, we are new and not really new to HPC. We do high performance computing on 32-bit and on Itanium for quite some time, but with a very, very limited number of customers and very small, very little number of deployments.
Yeah.
But the HPC edition will ship later next year, or as the plan is at least today, will support in the beginning only the 64-bit platform. So HPC and 64-bit, the story goes hand in hand for Microsoft.
Oh, that's great. And are you guys engaging any of the video content guys and that are doing this kind of thing for multi-threaded cluster API stuff?
Absolutely, yes. We have already made contact a couple of months ago with some of the major players in this area, and some of them have already been in another lab here on campus in helping them understanding our plans, helping them migrating their application, tuning their applications for our coming HPC release.
And I don't know if I can say this or not, and we'll edit it out if you say no, but I did some consulting for Avid up in Massachusetts, who does the Adobe Premiere movie editing, video editing software, and they were just getting into .NET then, and that was a couple years ago. So I imagine that this will be great news for them if they're indeed thinking of making their application a managed code app.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, well, Gianpaolo.
Yes.
I think it's your turn, man.
Woohoo!
So J2EE to .NET migration, and Lord knows there's a lot of it going around these days.
Yes, absolutely. So the things, one of the great feedback that I got from this workshop was attended mainly by external partners. So that was not a Microsoft event. So that was a Microsoft event, but the attendees were mostly non-Microsoft. So mainly partners that have direct contact with customers and ISVs. Is that there is a very highly increasing demand on migration capabilities. So one thing that started a few years ago when .NET basically came out was all these Java guys being very reluctant in embracing .NET.
Right.
A lot of the Java guys in J2E in a couple of years after that were perceiving Microsoft as a non-player in the enterprise. They were looking at COM stuff and not understanding COM+, not understanding all these technologies, and say, you know what, those guys are not for me. So we initially initiated a dialogue with those guys a few years ago around the interop message. So you guys can keep your investments the way they are. You guys can basically run your application, just give a try on .NET. Start doing some very cool stuff, maybe on the desktop or maybe on the web on .NET,
right,
and just interop with Java.
Yeah, one of the guys who's been on the show twice now, Ted Neward, is a big .NET interop guy. He's played in both Java and .NET worlds as yourself. And in fact, we just got done doing a nice talk with him and Don Box and some other people about that.
Yes, absolutely. But that got us only started. So the thing is, what was extremely helpful in the interop is that a lot of enterprises and ISVs got to experience .NET. And so what's happening now is that with the .NET maturity becoming very high and a lot of evidence that .NET is enterprise class, that .NET is used in very large projects, then the barrier of, or the perception of staying on Java just because it's the only enterprise class environment is disappearing. So now that this barrier is not existing anymore, a lot of people are interested in going to .NET for the good reasons, such as the productivity you gain, the fantastic IDE, Visual Studio, but also to take advantage of the entire Windows platform. You might have a lot of other products that are getting a lot of traction, such as Beanstalk or such as SharePoint. And so a lot of people say, hey, but if we are here using SQL or Beanstalk or SharePoint, why don't we commit even more to Windows and basically jump on .NET, because the integration with those products will be facilitated, will be higher. So as I was saying, there's a lot of companies, and I cannot name most of them right now, but big names, big banks, and big insurance companies that are really interested in moving a lot of their code, a lot of their assets onto .NET because they perceive that it's going to be much less costly,
right,
and much more productive for their team to maintain that code and evolve that code onto .NET, especially now that they're embracing service-oriented architecture and they perceive that .NET is a much better platform for web services.
Yeah.
Indigo is coming, so they really want to take advantage of that. So what started as an interrupt game is actually becoming a migration game where basically say, you know what, I wouldn't say ditch it because they still want to retain some of their core assets, and this is fine, so they can interrupt with a very core asset that they do not want to change. But some of the peripherals, some of the things that they were keeping against their will, so to speak, on Java, that's going to be what's migrating over in the next few months.
Okay. Now, the migration means obviously like converting the code?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, code conversion is a lot easier from Java to C# if you're just talking about, POJO, plain old Java objects. But if you're using J2EE, you're using a lot of those enterprise classes and things. That's a rewrite, isn't it?
Well, actually, there's a product, the GLCA. It's called the Java Language Conversion Assistant, which is the third release right now, which is in beta. Actually converts J2EE applications. So you can get EJBs, you can have servlet JSPs, you have things like that are moved over using this conversion assistant. And the average rate that you get out of this project is about 80 to 85% of the code.
That's pretty good.
And obviously, there will be some manual review.
Right.
We have to look at some of the things. But actually, this is a big discussion we had in the workshop. And you can, if the code you start with is actually quite cleanly separated, you have all those concerns encapsulated, and you have a clear UI, a clear business logic, a clear infrastructure code that looks after the persistence or the connectivity to other system. You can have a very high conversion rate on some of the business logic because at the end of the day, the business logic is not taking it, it's not doing any persistence. It's just manipulating lists and doing some number manipulation and for loops and what have you. And the pieces that are around persistence, the entity beans and things like that, you might have to think about how to do this.
Right.
But just to complement this information, this is true. There are areas that will be easier to migrate than others. And we can help in the vast majority of those areas.
This lab that you were just doing, Gianpaolo, this was a Microsoft lab where some people came and converted their J2EE apps?
No, actually, this lab was a more a train-the-trainer lab.
Okay.
The idea here was to train and offer the migration capability down to many geographical areas.
Okay.
That we could equip people, in Canada and in South Africa and in several regions in the U.S. And being able to offer locally migration.
I see.
Migration knowledge, migration consulting, and migration help with the local guys. So the idea was really to train 20 top guys to have that capabilities replicated, basically a scale-out sort of program. So instead of having customers to come here to Redmond every time they want to do some migration, if we help and teach the best practices, the patterns that they have to go through, and also the tools that we have to migrate to other trainers, then ISVs can basically work with them locally to migrate their application.
Okay, cool. And has it been going well?
Oh, fantastic! I'm actually compiling the feedback while Volker was talking. I was looking at the feedback forms.
Oh, okay.
And actually they were very, very happy. Many of those were not aware of how deeply and how good our tools are actually in that area.
Right.
So they were aware of most of the guidance that we provided them with in terms of the mappings.
Yes.
What J2E constructs and idioms look like on the .NET space? What are the patterns that are common on J2E will be implemented on .NET? They were quite aware of that, but they didn't know how much help they could get from the conversion assistant, but also like J# itself. There is a lot of interest from many of the guys there to really take full advantage of the J# functionality and basically recompiling most of the code as is. Even though J# plays some sort of a niche market.
Right. I was going to say, why not just convert to C#?
Well, the thing is, there will be a lot of hybrid migration. So once you assess and you look at the code you have, there will be areas that, because they take advantage of the enterprise edition things, or EJBs, or things like that, or because they use Swing or whatever where J# is not capable of compiling, then you can do JLCA. But if you then look at some other areas of the application, especially around the business logic, where, as I said before, very often business logic, if encapsulated properly, is basically plain language features. So if statements and loops and things like that, and lists and hash tables and what have you. That is actually very easily compilable by J#. And once you have the DLL on the other side, you have the code that was ported by the JLCA reference, the J# produced DLL and things like that. So you can basically have a different approach based on what you want to migrate within a single project.
Cool. That's cool. Well, I don't really know much about Java, so I'm just sort of nodding my head and saying, well, that sounds good. But I'm sure the listeners who are Java savvy will understand exactly what all that means.
One thing also I want to take the opportunity to communicate through this radio show is that if any of you guys out there are interested in Java migration, we can help. We have programs, we have technical resources, we have we have teams dedicated to help you out in that initiative, and you won't regret it. So I don't know.
Let's get some resources out there, some links. Starting with you, Gianpaolo.
I mentioned my fantastic blog with my 2 posts.
Okay.
I promised my manager, promised Neil, there will be much more serious about blogging. But I will also be putting together a lot of content that can be used offline. But one of the best places to start with is go to actually 2 places. One is to go to msdn.microsoft.com/Java. You will have a lot of information there. And a lot of information will also be part of the msdn.microsoft.com/ISV site, where there will be a lot of technical enablement information around Java migration and all the Windows-related technologies. So once again, msdn.microsoft.com/Java or /ISV.
Okay. And how about 64-bit resources?
Okay, 64-bit. 64-bit, I have a blog, blogs.msdn.com/VOLKERW. And resources on the web, Microsoft.com/64-bit.
Okay. Great.
www.route64.net.
I love it.
And if you want to learn more about the labs we do where we help ISVs to migrate to 64-bit, there's an email alias, go64@microsoft.com. So go64@microsoft.com.
Okay, good. And in the beginning of the show, Matt Trevor sent us a message from the website from Pittsburgh, and it was just a little bit out of place, and I didn't want to interrupt the flow, but he asked, can somebody give a brief overview of ADAM, ADAM, all caps? Do you know what he's talking about?
Yeah, ADAM is Active Directory application mode.
Okay.
Basically an LDAP, a standalone LDAP server, if you will. So it's based on the same code as Active Directory, but it doesn't have a lot of the network operating system infrastructure aspects of it.
Okay.
So it won't do that, like the integrated security and the single sign-on capability within the Windows Enterprise.
Okay.
But it does offer all the LDAP services.
And it's a bit easier to use. Is that the idea?
Yeah, the idea is that you can set up an Atom instance or multiple Atom instances in one machine, right, without converting it into a domain controller. So you don't have to deal with all the network issues of having a domain controller running in your system specifically for your application.
To link that back to Java migration, for instance, Atom is actually a very nice service to have because, as you know, people who know about Java and J2E, they heavily depend on a directory service. There's a lot of calls made to the what's called the JNDI, the Java naming and directory interface. And before Atom, it was not extremely easy to map that concept onto .NET. So with Atom around, then a lot of the way Java developer code and taking advantage of directory services in most of their application can actually take advantage of Atom being around and things like that.
That's cool. Great. Well, you guys, it's been great talking to you. Do any of you have any last-minute words of advice or for the listeners or calls to action maybe that we didn't get mentioned?
Well, move to Windows. It's worth it.
And for 64-bit, 64-bit is, unavoidable.
Right. And let's hope that those applications come out to support it, and that a lot of that has to do with our listeners, the .NET community, making sure that they're 64-bit aware, and especially doing multi-threading applications on large clusters and things.
Well, on behalf of myself and Rory, I know you're out there somewhere in Vegas having fun, and Jeff Maciolik in the sound room, and all the listeners listening live, thanks very much for coming on .NET Rocks, guys, and I hope to meet up with you someday soon.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.